Oh no, it's me! Actually doing a proper video for once. Weird, isn't it? Yeah, ostensibly what this channel's for. Like, video essays and stuff. Yeah, this one's about that,
Free
actually.
speech. Freedom of speech. Free speech.
This was a bad idea, wasn't it? The goal today is to do more of an examination on the limits of free speech that we experience in life than just like an anthology of donking. But let's start with some anyway, for the fun of it.
But of course, in real life,
Tucker Carlson was on Fox News with his own show, dripping poison into the ears of baby boomers from coast to polluted coast of the USA and beyond. Whilst there, he was earning somewhere between $15 and $20 million a year. In April 2023, he was fired from there for his involvement in spreading the stolen election conspiracy theory, which eventually led to Fox being sued for $1.6 billion by the manufacturer of some of the voting machines used in the country. Recently, he has announced that he's doing a show on Twitter somehow, which is called the last remaining platform in the world to allow free speech. You can tell that's true, and not an outright lie, by their silencing of political parties in Turkey during the election there in May 2023. He's never been one to shy away from lying, if that last part wasn't evidence enough. His usual style is basically all racist, sexist, xenophobic, homophobic and transphobic lies. Basically, if there's a bigotry you can have, he's pushed it.
no one did believe that.
No way.
Jordan Peterson tries to mask his own bigotry in his pseudo-intellectualism. Whilst he is legitimately a professor of psychology, his license to practice clinical psychology is currently being disputed because of his utter lack of professional standards to his patients. Or anything else, really. He became well known by being a dick to trans people whilst shielding fascists, something he's maintained throughout the years. He also regularly does some weird stunts, such as an all-meat diet, which almost killed him, and going through an experimental induced coma for addiction therapy, which almost killed him. He's now part of the Daily Wire's cast of ghouls, the company last year revealing that they bring in close to $150 million a year. He also regularly gets paid for his speaking engagements at universities, theatres and various media outlets. His fee starts at $100,000. I don't think people should book him. In fact, I think
That's a really bad idea.
It is on like Donkey Kong.
Alex Jones! Ugh. An absolutely unhinged grifter who peddles exclusively in conspiracy theories, regularly flirts with outright fascism, and is the only one here that has faced any real punishment for his actions. He was recently ordered to pay $1.4 billion in damages for his lies over the 2012 Sandy Hook mass shooting. These damages are based off his assets and earnings, so this fucker has made serious money from pushing his shit. At one point in 2018, his company, InfoWars, made more than $800,000 a day.
So first things first, what these grifters are on about when they're talking about free speech doesn't exist. I know, shock, horror, riots, excitement, blah. Free speech in a legal sense is basically like the right to openly criticise the government, which does exist in most democratic societies to some extent or another, at least. Look, it's complicated, I'll get to it. So what all these bum leeches are on about is that they want to just horrendously spew whatever horrendous shit crosses their mind without consequence. That's the intent of it, at least. But of course what they really want is lots and lots of money. These haunted septic tanks are nothing but the tetanus-infused tip of what's long been the reactionary cry the world over, complaining about how they can't spew their favourite string of slurs at whatever minority passes their fancy. Does nothing but reveal their own bigotry, how much they just wish to impart violence on anyone that they don't like the look of, quite frankly. With that comes indignant, affronted anger over the slightest amount of pushback someone might show them, demonstrating that they feel the revulsion to bigotry, that someone calling theirs out is somehow worse than the bigotry itself, because they're cunts. What they're relying on to get away with this shit is a societally expected civility, ingrained into us from a young age, a cultural aversion to conflict, of making a fuss. Civility in that sense is, of course, a load of shit.
Mannerisms and behaviours considered to be at the height of civility are aristocratic. The fact that so many of these ideas persist into society, culturally pressured upon us, speaks to the level of classism still present in the UK. One of the biggest faux pas an oik like me can commit is being a nuisance to my betters, like Oliver Twist asking for more gruel. Asking those that rule us for the smallest improvement in our lives is ineffectual at best, and actually making our needs known through protest, campaigns and direct action is increasingly harshly punished, including outright criminalising protests altogether. One of the ways the powerful keep us in line is with the ridiculously repressive anti-defamation laws we have here. Whilst having stuff in place to deal with defamation is a good idea, the way it works here is basically that the rich get to just point at someone they don't like the look of and give them a legally binding shut up. This is because the money required to fight something like this when it's directed at you is beyond the reaches of all but the utter bastard. An example of this is when infamous TERF arsehole J.K. Rowling used this tactic to get a tweet deleted. The tweet compared her to a Nazi, or at least has views that align with them. Considering JKR has publicly praised open fascist and yet another Daily Wire contributor, Matt Walsh, for the transphobic screed nominally called a documentary he made last year, as well as noted not a feminist, Posey Parker. Parker isn't exactly helping JK's case against the Nazi comparisons, as during her sojourn to Australia and Aotearoa, actual goddamn neo-Nazis came out to support her. How civilised? Through this supposed civility, obedience and subservience is enforced. It's why those that call for and cause mass deaths of thousands in polite words abide in the halls of power, and why those of us who oppose them, save lives and are actively trying to make the world a better place are tossed aside and vilified for being uncouth. This classist divide in language also drives to the very core functioning of the state.
Notionally, English is like universally English. There are like distinct accents and styles, like American English having slightly different spelling to British English, but generally speaking, any English speaker will be able to speak to any other English speaker in the world without too much difficulty, apart from having a surprisingly heated argument about what this is called. The correct answer is, of course, mine. Where this varies to an infuriating degree is anything to do with politics of the law. The language used in the House of Commons and all our laws in this decrepit kingdom is so abstracted from the way that human beings actually talk to each other to make it into its own, like, cant. And that's intentional. Think of, like, Polari, or the semi-mythological thieves' cant, only instead of doing cool and base things, like subverting the finances and power of tyrants, or hot, gay, sex, it's bad and oppressive, kind of like the polar opposite of hot, gay, sex. An endingly frustrating way that politicians have to talk to each other in this country is nothing but the stinking crust of what fermented bollocks governs us. Keeping this indecipherable to all those that aren't, like, trained in decoding this creates an inherent power imbalance. Not being able to parse exactly what the law is gives an enormous amount of wiggle room to the fascists that police us to do with whatever the fuck they want. And they know that. The police, that is. They know that. The fun thing about that is that the vast majority of the police don't know what the law is either. For a good idea of the numbers, just Google police 40%. Something else deemed uncivil and thus unfairly seen as a marker of the lower classes is swearing. Something which I've never really been able to get my head around, even as a kid. Like, why are these words, most of which you refuse to tell me the meaning of, considered to be at the height of the naughty list? Why am I punished so for saying I need to shit rather than I need to poo? Why haven't you got me checked for the obvious autism? Yeah, we've all got stuff to work through. Swearing is a truly universal thing. Every extant language on the planet has its shit, and shit. Oh, bollocks, I've left the translator on. Boop. Yeah, so every tongue has its shit, murder, and skata.
What are you whittering on about, you worthless piece of buck dog?
Oh, that's a good one.
I have had quite enough of this patak. Open fire!
Another one. Oh. So this raises a couple of questions. Firstly, if these words are so ubiquitous and just mean such benign things as like poo and sex, then why haven't we managed to get past their taboo? And secondly, did I really spend days of effort putting together a half-assed Star Trek set just to say a couple of Klingon swear words? For the first, this is that ingrained cultural pressure of civility, doing a lot of the heavy lifting, along with a society that constantly reinforces it. PG movies having a limit of being able to say shit like once or whatever, and the soft watershed of 9 PM in the UK for TV channels to be able to say the naughty words. There's also a legal element to it as well. UK police can arrest someone for swearing in public if they feel like it. It's like public indecency or some shit. This is something that they enforce less on kind of like the content of the law and more of a vibes-based thing. And those vibes are rancid. And for the second question, yes. Yes, I did. Because I have good impulse control. I want to fly a kite. But maybe the taboo around swearing isn't so much the words themselves and more the intent behind them. But that won't really explain the myriad of slightly embarrassing PG swear substitutes that exist. My mum shouting sugar when something goes wrong isn't any real different than if she shouted shit. It's still the same kind of expression of frustration of, oh no, something just went wrong. We swear for emphasis, and yes, swearing in insults is still emphasising a point to a certain degree. But we also swear because it feels fucking great. Like it legit pumps us full of endorphins and junk. It also helps with pain relief. Like what Brian Blessed does in this clip.
Bollocks!
Wait, shit, copyright. I can work around this. So, like, the really interesting thing about all this stuff is that it's most effective the more taboo that you think the word is. Like that clip I'm pretending that I actually showed you instead of a distractingly shoehorned bit is from a documentary about the whole swearing thing and pain relief. Brian Blessed, the bollocky boy here, lasts less time having his hand in ice water than someone who isn't most well known for effusively saying fuck on national television. Fun caveat to all this is that apparently you need to actually use swear words for it to work. Apparently. Fuck yeah. I do like an experiment here to demonstrate this, but frankly being a disabled like in the UK is pain enough, thanks. Like, comment, and subscribe. Wait. Oh, right, yes, slurs. I have no idea how you wouldn't know what slurs are, but if you're somehow unaware, then first of all, welcome to society. We've got Yorkshire puddings here. They're pretty good. We're still working on the rest of it, mind, but we got Yorkshire puddings pretty bang on. Slurs are pejoratives, insults that target entire marginalised groups. The power imbalance there is a central element to the harm they propagate. Their origins, for the most part, come from denigrating classifications, descriptions, and just outright lies. They're aimed at the othering of entire swaths of humanity from the hegemonic norm to instill hatred, depression onto the targeted, and a sense of supremacy for the powerful that use them. This is why the name for a certain type of bland bread-based biscuity product isn't a slur, and the word that was repeatedly shouted at me whilst I was getting the shit kicked out of me by someone who I thought was my best friend when I came out to him as bi is... Like, comment, and subscribe. I knew that delivering a personal account of slurs being used against me would drive the point home somewhat. So to kind of comfort me through it, I'm in one of my favourite places in the world, bed. I've got the wonderful Ripley Roo, who might be asleep, I'm not sure. She seems to be enjoying this bus. And I've got my emotional support copy of Westlife Phanomania. Huh. With the power that slurs can have over people, it seems like it makes sense why a load of platforms would just outright blanket censor ban them. Right? Well, this is where it gets nuanced, because there's such a thing as slur reclamation. This is where marginalised people take the slurs directed at them for their own use, robbing them of the power they have over them. For this to be true reclamation, this needs to be done in a liberatory way, not assimilationist. Hello. That's the difference between reactionary right-wing shithead grifter Milo Yiannopoulos. Hello. You don't make things easy for me, do you? No. I do love you, though. I do love you. So, Ripley wanted to go out, so she's gone out. I shall now continue. Less interrupted, but... Oh, I enjoyed having a fuss. I did. I enjoyed having a dog fuss. That's the difference between Milo Yiannopoulos calling himself a dangerous F-slur. At least he did until his current shtick of claiming that he's ex-gay, and that same word's used by queer people that are actually fighting for our rights and liberation. Pero, por supuesto, all of this is nuanced too. No culture is a unified monolith. Just because one person of a group is okay with something doesn't mean everyone else in that group is. Case in point, me. I'm not okay with the F-slur being used for me, or I don't even particularly like saying it, particularly. For me, that's a trauma response. It rekindles memories of that thing I talked about 5 paragraphs ago. I have talked to a few other people that have had similar kind of traumatic experiences with the word used against them, but they use the word themselves. They say that for them it's helped defang it, it kind of helps them deal with the trauma itself as well. It is taking power from that hurt you and reclaiming it as your own. That's pretty rad. Now, there are a few slurs that I do use for myself. I don't have any baggage around them, and they're fun to say. I quite like the fact that I call myself a stat 10 out of 10. Hell yeah. Don't know why I'm bothering to censor all these. It isn't like I'm going to get monetized anyway. Unless...
Introducing the Curry Magic Patreon! For as little as just one monetary unit a month, you can help this weird being stay alive. With this, you'll have access to exclusive vlogs, outtakes, and early access to scripts. Your money goes to such exciting things as food, wrestling, grey market medication that I need to keep my hormone levels in check and mitigate the worst aspects of my ADHD, but are all but impossible for me to get through this country's socialised health services that are being intentionally starved and crushed by neoliberal ghouls.
Sucks!
And, available for a limited time, pledge £100 or more a month to receive vague directions to the place where I've buried one of 5 cassette tapes, each containing a personal message from myself, a specially recorded song, and a list of some of my favourite words. Patreon.com/KiriMagic. That's patreon.com/KiriMagic. What are you waiting for? Pledge today! And now, back to the video.
Crucially, just because I'm okay using these words for myself, that doesn't give anyone else free rein to use them for me. I don't use them for anyone else unless I have a close personal relationship with them already, and I know they're okay with it. Some randomer coming up to me in the street who calls me a I'm going to see that as an attack, right? And my reaction to that is, well, it's going to be based on context, but you know, that could be anywhere from a smirkingly disapproving mate all the way up to the proper response one should give upon seeing a fascist. There's no such thing as a slur pass. Someone who isn't from a marginalised identity does not get to use slurs directed towards that identity. If someone from that targeted group says, yeah, you can call me that, then I'd advise having a bit of a think about that. And if you do take them up on the offer, remember it's only them that's giving you permission to use it with them. My own issues around the F slur has led me to have a bit more sympathy, empathy with people that, LGBT people, I should add, that don't like the word queer. Now, queer is an odd one because it is a reclaimed slur, but it's also become a general descriptor used universally almost. We talk about the queer community, queer people, I'm queer. No, I say that my sexual identification is queer. I'm not solely attracted to a single gender. Bi and pan don't feel like they quite cut it. Queer. I'm queer. I'm polyamorous, but that's got nothing, whatever. But as I mentioned to start with, there are people out there that have legitimate trauma over the word being used. But its ubiquity has defanged it so much to the general population that that trauma has been alienated somewhat. But to them, it's still going to cut deep. Discussions around the word queer have already been murkied somewhat by the way that it's been taken up by assimilationist gay people to make it into a kind of divisive issue. Assimilationist people want to maintain a veneer of respectability, believing that that will somehow grant them access to the halls of power and acceptance in society, which it kind of doesn't. A notable example would be Matthew Parris, the ex-Tory MP and Guardian writer. You can fuck off into the sun. How do we manage that tension within the community then? again, it's nuances, personal understanding of individuals. If someone says, no, I don't like that, it hurts me, then we adapt. We respect their pain. We treat people with care, basically. Some people have a surprisingly hard time doing that, though. I've lost count of the amount of times that I've had to stop someone using the word gay as a synonym for bad. Usually the same person, over and over again. But back to what I was saying about platforms flat banning these words. This is for the same reasons that their algorithms boost certain things and hide others. They can't have nuance and understanding. Me and other people who are much better at this whole video shtick have to be mindful about what we say. For some of them at least, this shtick is their livelihood. That's not a fault on the size of the platform. That's not a problem inherent to the amount of people using it. It's a problem of capitalism. Capitalism. It sucks. But yeah, it does. Okay, so, right, let's go through this, yeah? Now, these big companies, like YouTube, owned by Google, and Twitch, owned by Amazon, are incentivized to do the barest possible in mitigating hate speech. Because that would involve having to do something. And doing things costs money. It'd also mean having a huge amount of educated staff solely for the purposes of moderation, and that's expensive. Now, they do actually have some moderation staff, but nowhere near the numbers they need, or with the cultural understanding and breadth of knowledge they need to actually, effectively sift through the everything. These people are pretty much solely used when the platform's algorithms causes too many problems for their biggest users. What they actually use is just like a series of automated systems, algorithms, and increasingly quote-unquote AI. Think ChatGPT if that had a tangible say on your livelihood. Or just wait a year, I guess. It might be a little bit strong to say that Facebook outright caused the 2017 Rohingya genocide in Myanmar, but it almost certainly wouldn't have happened without them. I'm going to be mixing up term Facebook and Meta throughout this. In this report, the social atrocity, Meta and the right to remedy for the Rohingya from Amnesty International, they found that anti-Rohingya sentiment within the country rose significantly from 2012 onwards. Facebook entered the country officially in 2011. From the report itself.
A number of UN bodies, NGOs and media organisations have documented some of the vast quantity of anti-Rohingya content, including content amounting to incitement to violence, discrimination and genocide, which circulated on Facebook in advance of and during the 2017 atrocities. In the months and years leading up to August 2017, content that spread dehumanising, hateful and discriminatory views towards the Rohingya, oftentimes portraying genocidal intent, was rife on the Facebook platform throughout Myanmar. This content, which encouraged and justified violence and discrimination against the Rohingya, was posted by a variety of actors, including senior government and military officials, prominent civilian hate groups, and figures including radical Buddhist nationalist groups such as Ma Ba Tha, and news pages, groups, and other accounts with large followings. The IIFFMM documented over 150 online public social media accounts, pages and groups that regularly spread messages amounting to hate speech against Muslims in general or Rohingya in particular. According to the IIFFMM, these were just a small sample of the kinds of messages that have circulated in Myanmar in recent years. Many of the examples cited by the IIFFMM contain explicit death threats and promises of violence against the Rohingya and frequently used dehumanizing language such as Kwe Kalar, Muslim dog, which was also frequently used by the Myanmar military during the 2017 atrocities. Over 1,000 posts, comments, images and videos attacking the Rohingya and other Muslims in Myanmar, some of which had been on the platform since 2012, were documented and analysed by Reuters news agency and the Human Rights Centre at UC Berkeley School of Law in August 2018. One illustrative post cited the Reuters investigation, which had been on Facebook since 2013, stated, "We must fight them the way Hitler did the Jews, damn Kalars." Another example cited a post which stated, "These non-human Kalar dogs, the Bengalis are killing and destroying our land, our water, and our ethnic people."
Facebook's moderation was insufficient. Worse than that, it was practically non-existent. Actually, even worse than that, its recommendation algorithms sometimes actively boosted posts with hatred, vitriol, if not outright murderous and genocidal intent. The conclusion of the report is rather damning.
Meta's contribution to adverse human rights impacts against the Rohingya was substantial in nature, not minor or trivial, because the core features of the Facebook platform, specifically its newsfeed, ranking and recommendation algorithm, actively amplified, promoted and delivered posts inciting advocacy of hatred and violence against the Rohingya to the target audience who were most likely to act upon them. The effects of these actions for the Rohingya were especially severe because of the near total dominance of the Facebook platform within Myanmar's online environment at the time. The substantial nature of this contribution is further underlined by the company's repeated failures to undertake appropriate human rights due diligence, which could have effectively prevented or mitigated human rights risks, in addition to the severity of the consequences of the company's failure.
Facebook had basically monopolised the internet in Myanmar in the run-up to this. It was a pre-installed app on phones sold in the country. They had a couple of plans called Facebook Flex and Free Basics. These were joint programs with the Myanmar government that gave basic access, one of them text only, to Facebook without data usage fees. Now, Meta didn't do this out of any kind of philanthropic idealism. This was a massive data mining effort with the added benefit, of course, of Facebook becoming synonymous with the term internet. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that they made bank from doing this all across the imperial periphery. And they still do. They actively do not care about their users. Just the money they can extract from them. Anything that cuts into that bottom line is superfluous to them. A small thing like a genocide might see a drop in overall users, but an uptick in engagement. The sad reality is that bombastic hatred sells. That's how all those fuckhead hate mongers I mentioned up top get their money. That and being funded by fossil fuel billionaires like the Koch brother. Used to be another brother. Luckily he's dead now. Fuck him. Rest in piss. Billionaires like that ancient withered ghoul have a material interest in driving reactionary rhetoric. They want to keep selling the shit that's burning the planet. Rupert Murdoch, an ancient Australian withered ghoul, has the business model of his entire media empire centred on driving division through fear-mongering and sowing hatred into the fabric of society, mainly through such lovely outlets like Fox News and The Sun. When anyone who spouts this thin grey gruel gets treated with the respect they deserve, which is to say none, fuck 'em, they'll cry about civility, the ever long-lived tool of the ruling class to keep the oiks in line. They'll keep crying about being attacked, whilst the hegemony they propagate causes untold misery, targeting anyone that doesn't fit within their tiny view of what humanity should look like. they'll be driving fascism that will kill those in their sights. The Southern strategy, the war on drugs, groomer rhetoric, illegal immigration, trans bathroom panic, without sufficient pushback, all of this leads to one thing. There's only one way to deal with fascists. That's to beat them at every turn. Metaphorically. For a tolerant society to exist, for free speech to exist, we need to be intolerant of intolerance. The more intolerance, bigotry and hatred is allowed to prosper in our society, the less tolerant it becomes. That leads to fascists infesting our lives. And this is how we beat them. Anywhere, anytime they show up, we show up. We make them unwelcome. We make them afraid to show their faces in the streets. We invade and break up wherever they're trying to organise in, and if necessary, we bash back. To do this effectively, join or start organisations aimed at doing just that. Anti-racist networks, cop watches, anti-immigration raid coalitions, rights advocacy groups, anarchist communes. There's no end to the amount of groups that do this work already and need your help. A lot of these will be easily found through social media, even if they are stifled on these sites to a certain extent. A diversity of tactics is needed, with a focus on direct action, getting shit done, in other words. The propaganda of the deed is a hell of a thing. Trying to engage them in debate is pointless, and the same is true for simply debunking their lies back to them directly. It's important to a certain extent to point out their hypocrisies and outright lies, don't get me wrong, but that's for the benefit of the people who aren't fascists. These dickheads plain just don't care if what they're saying is true or not. What they care about, what their entire point is, their goal, is looking strong and causing harm. Killing people. That's what we're fighting. Fascism is on the rise in the imperial core, the flames fanned by the same sparks that caused it. Capitalism. The world's burning. Let's beat that fire out.